we talk a lot about how I give help, but when did you first seek help and how did that go?
I didn't seek help. I was taken
Okay.
to help.
Yeah.
I was forced to go when I was, young. It didn't go very well. First, I went to a psychologist who would just ask me these questions, but there was no tools given. And so I'm like, okay, so you're unpacking this bag, and all my crap is now that we've discussed, if we even, because in those days, many of them didn't even ask questions. It was like, what dream did you have? Or, tell me about your parents and, your family dynamic. And then they took me to this psychiatrist in New York City. They were doing the best they could.
Yeah.
They had no idea what this was. I mean, it was pretty prevalent at that time because of fashion and whatnot. So they took me to this therapist in New York City who gave me this medication that, I'm so glad I didn't stay on it, because later on it turned out that it was not a very good thing for you whatsoever. And it made me feel so like I couldn't even think straight that I didn't take it. And I remember I went back and I'm like, yeah, I'm taking it. I'm fine. All the symptoms are gone, just to get out of there, just to get peace, just to be left alone. So it did not go well for me because, one, I don't think that I was ready.
Yeah.
And two, I wasn't given any tools. When you feel this, maybe try doing this breathing.
Right.
I wasn't given any tools. I got to a point, Zoe, where
I wanted to
stop.
That's true.
I wanted to stop. I felt like I had shackles around me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't break. I wanted to stop. Yeah. And I could not.
You name a really, really important point. Like, if you are not ready, it is unlikely the change will occur. It has to come from yourself. And I really appreciate the importance you draw of, hey, I needed skills. So in psychology, we have like a concept of skills deficit or performance deficit. So skills deficit is like, hey, I'm walking around the world with my shoes untied. I don't know how to tie my shoes. Oh, you're teaching me how to tie my shoes? Great. I can walk around the world with my shoes tied, not tripping over my laces anymore. Performance deficit. I know how to tie my shoes, but I'm still walking around this world with my shoelaces untied, and I keep falling over them. I can't figure out when I need to tie my shoes or how I use my skills.
Right.
Because I don't know how to perform the skills.
When should I?
When do I do it?
Time
so the interaction between the skills and the performance, it's so important.
Yes. I still think even now, there's a deficit between, now I think that skills are taught, but there's still a deficit between, here are the skills, these are the warning signs. The second you feel you get flush, recognize these warning signs. This is when you do the skills.
Yeah.
So I think that is something that's definitely changing and growing in the community, but I still think like that is a hole that really, needs to be closed.
What makes eating disorders particularly hard is that because of this discrepancy between your body and self, like the mind and body connection is so deterred and like honestly kind of fragmented.
Right.
Maybe you're not even noticing that you're getting flushed.
That, for me,
was huge.
Because I was so disconnected that I was in it before
You even knew
realized
Yeah.
I was in it.
Yeah, which is why dissociation is so common with eating disorders.
Right. Let's say you have somebody and you know that they, in your family, has an eating disorder. Let's say it was my parents to me, and I wasn't ready to go. Is there something that can be said or offered that's not going to therapy, but maybe like a first step, maybe like, listen, I know that you're not ready to go, but here's a group to go. Does that exist?
First of all, I don't believe that therapy works for everyone. Like, there are so many different modalities of healing.
Right.
So maybe it's movement, maybe it's music, maybe it's art. Like, talk therapy is not for everyone.
Right.
I really like when we are able to talk about other sorts of treatment modalities. Am I well versed on them? No. But I do know they exist, and I do know that they're helpful for folks. What I first like to acknowledge is how much healing can just happen in your own home.
Right.
So the National Eating Disorders Association has a resource online called the Parent Toolkit. And it,
Oh, wow.
And it goes through different ways to like approach meal times, how to have conversations with a loved one about your concerns. Don't be shocked at how much you can do by modeling your own behavior, modeling healthy relationships with food, modeling body acceptance. So it can start there if you're feeling like going to treatment is not the next step that they're ready for. That being said, if there is some sort of medical concern, we can't always get them there on their own volition.
You know, I was thinking, you know, maybe even if you just say to them, you know, there's an art class.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be about the pathology. It can find healing through different ways.
Right.
Through going to through an art class or a concert,
concert,
whatever it is, listening to music
meditation
together, meditation class. Yeah, other sorts of research. You know, it's so funny you say this. There's a story about this specific type of crane, and there was this researcher who was looking at why this crane was going extinct. And for so long, the researcher was like staring at the crane, trying to figure out its behaviors, its patterns. How can we help replenish this species? And then she shifted her attention to, okay, what resources are there to help the crane survive? So once she stopped looking at the crane directly and looked at the environment, she was able to pick up all of these different ways the crane's needs were not being met in her environment. So instead of focusing on the person at first, see if there's different environmental things that we can do to support them.
It's so funny because it's the way I teach.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people teach and they look at the problem and all they see is the problem. And they don't see the whole body. They don't see the whole person. And the whole person, wow. So I'm blown right now.
Yeah.
My mind is blown. So if I'm just focusing on the eating disorder and not the whole person, I'm not looking for the way in. I'm just looking at the problem. And you need the way in.
Yeah.
And the way in could be through music, could be through meditation, could be through art, could be through open discussion at the family, could be through so many other things instead of beating that problem, because that problem's not going to move. The problem's not going to move. The problem is, just like in my work,
we got to see what makes it survive.
Got to see, the problem's the victim, not the culprit. Culprit could be lack of this, lack of that, lack of what's not there. So just, okay, if I'm like so in here, another creative outlet
could be something else.
Could be something else.
If we only look at the problem and at the behaviors and we don't look at the context, we're never going to help people feel better.
No.